Okay.
Lastly, and
You managed to zoom me in a bit before, but I'm quite happy with how it is at the moment. It's fine.
I did.
Yeah,
And
it's fine.
we are live, and this is fantastic. Welcome back, everyone, to Wednesday Live Talks organized by Race. Today, we broadcast our live talks from One Space Business Center in Dubai. Carla is joining us, fantastic. One Space is a one-stop solution for the businesses in Dubai, and they've been kind enough to give me this fantastic meeting room so I can have this beautiful light and sound, and we can do the live today from here. And I'm Anastasia. I will be your co-host for today, along with Carla and Jacob. I'm a facilitator at Race, and for those who are joining us for the very first time, let us tell you what Race is about. Race is the community of passionate coaches, educators, and parents that are creating a global movement to raise awareness of coaching in education. Today we have one of these wonderful people as our guest. It's a very special person from UK, a man who is wearing many hats to create a coherent and encouraging space to learn for future generations. He is an educational coach for both groups and individuals. He is a mentor coach as well, a trainer, a quality assurance successor, facilitator, and even a dean. His doctoral research was on the topic of how Emirati students learn best in a second language at high educational levels. And across your United Arab Emirates, he have helped Emiratis to flip their preferred learning styles with a different one, with the higher college of technology. And we will come to know about that more today. He believes that teachers, and if teachers and facilitators would be trained as a coaches and aligned with ICF competences, the students would be infinitely more engaged with their studies and therefore progress through life more successfully. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest for today, Dr. Lawrence Brown.
Well,
Lawrence,
good afternoon. Hello. Good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Lawrence, why don't we kick off with letting people what ICF stands for those who do not know that, and what are actually those core competences that ICF have that you would like, that you've already introduced for the studies?
Yeah, the ICF is the International Coach Federation, sometimes referred to as the International Coaching Federation. And it's the international body with 40-odd thousand people involved to make or to push up coaching as professionally as possible across corporations and across education and generally. So that's what it is. It's the core competency model was changed in 2021. There are now 63 main competencies listed under 6 or 7 headings in the core competencies. So your ethics and your coaching mindset and your agreements and contracting, they all go together to give a very professional and ethical professional perspective on coaching.
Thank you. So what was the reason? Why did you start working in classes, in schools, in universities, using ICF coaching competences? What was the reason behind?
It's interesting. I didn't know I was. I've been a teacher since I first started teaching in 1976, long before Carla was born. And Jacob, well, forget it. You weren't even thought of, man. So there was no jobs in England. Mrs. Thatcher was at war, basically, with us. And so I started volunteering in a local special needs school with 14 to 17-year-old children with mixed abilities. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. My mum and dad were both teachers. My sister's a teacher. So I thought, I'll go and train to be a college teacher. So I went off and did my PGCE in FE, further education, and I became a teacher in colleges. So that's how I came in front of classes. And I emigrated to Canada as a professor and ended up in Yokohama within a few weeks. And I've never really been back anywhere else in England. I've never really returned to England or Canada. I've lived overseas across the GCC and Asia all my life and worked in many different unique positions, I think. Yeah. Being lucky to be in the right place at the right time.
I see. I see. What was the response of all the students when unknowingly you've introduced the coaching techniques for them? How did they react it?
Well, it was strange because I came from the classrooms of Japan, colleges and schools, and they're very reticent to speak in English. They're embarrassed about their accents. They're not very confident. They don't get any practice. And so in high schools and colleges, you would find that you got no response from a class. You could have 25 students in the class. And for some of them, if you got 3 words out of them, you were doing really well. It was very teacher-led and very didactic because they would not engage. So then I came across to the classroom in a military college in Abu Dhabi, and you couldn't shut them up. It was fantastic. You couldn't shut them up. They just kept nattering away all the time. And I thought it was fantastic because you'd struggled to get students to respond. And now you just let them go. You could just sit back and watch them go. It was amazing. I loved it to death. It was brilliant. So I had to work out a way when I got recruited by the higher colleges to write a new degree with 6 weeks lead time that would be accredited and online, accredited with the US and also accredited with the British or the UK higher education authorities. So it was a bit tricky with 6 weeks lead time. I'd realized there were animosities between Western teachers using English as a medium of instruction in City and Guilds vocational training. And that got quite unpleasant sometime with Emirati men, Emirati males. There was a lot of pushback and some fairly unpleasant incidences. So I thought I've got to do something different. So I asked them how they wanted to learn. Now, they were adults working, so they had just gone through the higher national diplomas, mixed male and female colleges in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, so 4 campuses to begin with, and 33 students to interview and get on the course. And so I said, well, how do you want to learn? We've got to do this online as well. You're working full time. You're coming to me in the evenings, and I've got to get you through this academic top up between the HND and a degree level. So as I was writing the degree, I was putting it online in the morning. And then in the evenings, I was going to meet the students in Dubai and Abu Dhabi, and we would talk about the topics that they'd gone through before. And the way it worked, or the best way I found it worked, was to type a page or 2 and put it online with links. So instead of me teaching, they could go through the links. They were very internet savvy, of course. They could go through the links and find their own individual learning journeys through secondary and third links, etc. So when I brought them into the classroom and started asking questions like a coach would, Sarah or Samaya would say, hey, I found this, and you know, Abdul, I found this route, and I found organizational team working, which was amazing. And by drawing them in through peripheral learning and peer teaching, they all engaged. It was just the most remarkable thing I'd ever seen. So I just carried on asking questions. I didn't do any work, basically. There was one university. I was a quality assurance leader. They were coming up to their higher education review with the Australians. And they asked me to write an elective, a 3-credit elective that would be accreditable, and teach it. And I didn't have time to teach. So I took Moodle and I extended what I'd done in the Emirates. I took Moodle, 16 weeks, 14 weeks, one to begin with, where I gave them all their assignments and showed them how they were be graded. The last week I left for myself to do all the finished grading, 14 weeks of instruction, meeting twice a week. I just gave them one link for each week. I did nothing else. I just put a link on and I let them run with it. And they were absolutely incredible. They loved it. Fabulous reviews. And I hadn't done any work. They'd done everything. You don't need to if you sit back and just give them the right bait and just watch them go. It was amazing. And I've never done anything since. Your question was, how did it come to the competencies? Well, I started my training for coach in about 2014 with Dr. Claire Beckett of the Beckett McInroy consultancy based then in Bahrain. Dr. Claire is remarkable, and I've spent 6-7 years working with her to move up the coaching hierarchies. And we had this, I was given these core competencies as part of my homework for my journaling, and I went through these core competencies. And in a coaching session, I suddenly realized I'd done all this in the higher colleges. I had already done everything that was here. I think at that time there were 77 competencies. And I went through and I ticked every one. And then I went back through it and thought, I don't believe this. So I went through it and checked every one again. And I went back and I wrote a long paper about how I'd covered every one of these in the classrooms without knowing that they existed. Right. I could give you anecdotal evidence of each and every one of these. It was the most remarkable eureka moment. You know, in coaching, you get those eureka moments. Yeah. This was a eureka moment for me. It was just mind-blowing that I hadn't been teaching all that time. Since I was 25, 26, I'd actually been coaching without realizing it as a natural response to draw out of people their own self-confidence, their own self-esteem.
No, you are natural, Lawrence, and Anastasia is back. So welcome back, Anastasia.
Did I miss the secrets of Dr. Lawrence and the tools that he used for all the students?
I think you've missed a lot.
I'm going to watch replay for that, and I'm going to take a second to say that how privileged I feel living in the most progressive city where I have power shut down in my entire office. Isn't that wonderful? All right, that's fine. That's time to immigrate to another country. It's all right. Where are we now? Let's see. Which questions do we have from the audience? Did we have chance to see any? I see that we are having Martin Richards. If I may jump on the questions, would it be okay, Lawrence?
Please do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So we have one question from Martin. Let me read it out loud. What 3 concepts would you include in a teacher retraining that has a coaching focus?
Thank you, Martin, for that. Thinking out of the box here. What 3 concepts would you include in a teacher retraining that has a coaching focus? Well, number 1 would be to shut up. Just stop talking. What's the matter with you all? Just shut up. Let the kids get on with it. Crikey. When I was teaching in Japan, I was a guest English teacher full-time in a Japanese high school in Nagasaki. And I would be, I'd do my bit in the classroom, and then I'd sit at the back and I think it was Yogi Sensei was in this particular class. But I'd watch them teach, and they'd either teach in English or they'd flip back into Japanese to teach English with very regimented rows of students, like it was in the military college in Abu Dhabi. And I was in one class, and about 12, 13 minutes before the end of the session, the bell would go. And about 10 or 12 minutes before the end of the session, he sat down and stopped talking. And I thought, well, am I supposed to do something here? I've got 40 kids in front of me. I'm looking at the back of their heads and I'm thinking, and I just sat there for 12 minutes with everybody else just sitting there doing nothing for 12 minutes.
Oh.
And I thought about it later and I spoke to him and he said, students need time for reflection. So we build reflection in. So I went to Warwick University and I did a master's degree on how students listen. Not how students hear, but how students listen when they've got an English speaker teacher, a native English speaker teacher. And I did it with Asians and non-native English speakers across university master's degrees at Warwick University about 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Exactly, Martin. Shut up. I learned so much about teaching when I had laryngitis. Exactly. So my first thing would be to say, stop talking, start asking questions and sit back and see what happens and enable the peripheral learners. That's imperative. Enable your peripheral learners, because you've got like a third, a quarter of the class who are into it and doing what you ask. You've got this great big chunk in the middle who begrudgingly do what you ask, and not all of it. And then you've got these at the end who are either lost or just shy and just slow to get engaged, because you're not engaging them. And at Warwick, what I found was many of the teachers would speak at natural native English speaker speeds and drop in idioms and drop in humor. Well, after 7 minutes, the Chinese students were like this and talking to each other, which was irritating the teachers, the professors, all PhDs. All of these were PhDs, and many of them, as you know, you can have a PhD in England, and you might work for Boeing, and you want to teach engineering on a master's degree at Warwick, or you're invited to, but you have to do a PGCE. That's a 4-year part-time program, 1 day a week, to be contracted at an English university. If you want to keep working, you must do a PGCE. 4 years of study, 1 day a week, you're given off to do it. And they were just losing students left, right, and center. There was no reiteration. There was no use of multiple intelligence. In fact, the Chinese students, what they used to do back then, they had projectors in the room, and they would put acetate with diagrams on, and they'd write on the acetate to show on the whiteboard. But the students, all the Chinese students, would be given this big pile of papers at the beginning of the term with a photocopy of every one of those acetate slides to pre-read before they came to class. So they were aware of the glossary items that might trip them up. And Martin asked earlier, and the secret here, Martin, about flipped classes is you give them the links, and then they go away and they go through it. And then when they come back, and this is 15 years before, Sol Khan did it in the Khan Academy, you let the students take control. Natural leaders come up. Natural team working comes up. Natural mentorship comes up. Natural peer support comes up if you don't interfere. You can do this with 8-year-olds. It works remarkably well. You can, Carla. You can do it with 8-year-olds. I read a paper recently about a guy who did it with 8-year-olds and he gave them the curriculum for that term. So get into groups, teach what you want to teach, but you teach it. Like I did with that photography class. I gave them a link. I said, each one of you will do one presentation every week. It's your turn to teach, not mine. And I'd sit back and grade their presentation, which was based on engagement, not didactic presentation, but it was based on a conversation, elicit a conversation, which is, of course, what coaches do. That's what I would say.
I relate to that a lot as a beginner facilitator, to shut up and listen. Yeah, that's a good advice. I would like to jump on you to explore a little bit your relationship with the parents this time. So we know that you have founded the group for the parents on the Facebook, where you work proactively along with them to create a difference. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and how does your relationship with parents and communication looks like?
Okay. The school curriculum in the UK hasn't really changed since I was at school. They say it has, but the kids are coming home with the same physics textbooks and studying in the same way. They may go online, they may have YouTube. The teachers were grappling with online learning. My daughter's A-level classes, I was head of the PTA at the local school, the Parent Teachers Association, so I was quite involved. And at the beginning of lockdown, I went in and offered to teach teachers how to use online learning in a very simplistic way and very effectively. And I was told they don't need it. But then when I went to the head of A-levels, she said not one teacher had ever done any online learning before. They had no experience whatsoever in it. And so I became a bit more involved with the curriculum and watching my own daughters crying upstairs at midnight because they hadn't finished their homework. And as an educator, I knew what was going on. Teaching to the test ensures that the teachers don't have enough time to spend with individual students. So what they're doing is they're throwing question papers after the first semester out, having covered the entire syllabus in the first 12 weeks. They come back after half term or at the end of term, they throw last year's question papers and the year before, and even the year before. Go home and do that for homework. And I've got my daughter upstairs crying because she says, we haven't covered this in class. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Why should I do an O-level paper or an A-level paper when that's over a year away and I'm not ready yet. And I knew what was happening. It was the teachers struggling to teach to the grade because the league tables here, the league tables affect everything about the school. So they're doing their best to coach them through the exams. And I just thought that was disgusting. That's abusive. I'm sorry, that's abusive in any language. That's abusive. Children are being abused. So I decided the best way to do a research on this, the quickest way, and to get an international audience was on Facebook groups. So 6 months, February, I opened a Facebook group. 300-400 people have come back to me and said, they don't teach this at school. They don't teach this at school. They don't teach this at school. So now I've got a list of 80 or 90 life-worthy skill sets that are not being taught. So what I'm doing as of now, for the rest of this summer and probably the rest of the year, is taking those 80 or 90 topic areas and putting them in bite-sized learning chunks that young people can gain for access for nothing. And they're podcasts that I'm putting out now of my own volition on a website. And that will go across Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere. And they're free for young people to learn what things mean when they hear it on the news. Like my daughter went off to university. She had no idea how to use banking. Didn't no idea what interest rates were. Not a clue. Life-worthy life skills. It's imperative we prepare them for the tsunami of change that's going to come their way in their lifetimes. Schools keep looking backwards. Well, how can you prepare kids for the future if you're constantly looking backwards? It defies belief. Sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, that's insightful. It's good that there are people who are already thinking ahead of the time to know how to equip next generation. Otherwise, who's going to think for them? Somebody has to make it easier for them. And thank you for doing that. Allow me to ask the question as facilitator. You've been talking about taking your time for reflection and giving silence to the people of any age. Would you be able to share some tips or the ways to deal with this awkward silence when the group is going in silent mode for up to, in your case, up to 10 minutes and still being fine with yourself, not to interfere there and just to keep yourself far away? What the behavior patterns or what are the ways you can advise for facilitators like myself and educators out there to be comfortable with this long silence for the reflection time?
It depends where you come from. It's a social norm in Japan, as it is in most Buddhist countries. You just give them time to reflect, and nothing else is expected. Group work is the key in classrooms. Instead of studying individually, put them into learning groups. And you can be very clever about how you divide up those learning groups so that you've got one confident student in each one who can act as a team leader or peer mentor. It's like team coaching. Basically, you become a team coach and you coach the cohort as you would coach a team, both individually and as a group. So you're still using coaching competencies all the time, but put them into competitive groups and you can sit back and just, watch and manage what's going on, just facilitate. Then you can spot those peripheral learners who need a little extra help, a little extra positive nudge in the right direction. So that's what it is. It's just group work. Put as with 8-year-olds, give them the syllabus and guide them through how to explore it. And that's what's wrong with the curriculum here. We have syllabuses, but we have a very tight curriculum. There is very little curriculum, but we have syllabuses that are got through very quickly. And it's the same in Canada, America. It's the same in the GCC. It's the same. I was in Pakistan last year, and what I saw on the A-level classes was shocking. It was just absolutely unbelievable. And I had to grade teachers, whether we kept them on or not. Celebrity teachers, they call them. They come in charging a fortune, and they walk roughshod over students. And so the ones who were the best were the ones who showed empathy by allowing time for reflection and peer support.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to a very serious conversation today and impactful. I would like to ask you our last question for today before we go. Knowing that you witness the education system in multiple countries, which country can be a good example for the educators around the world to look at, to take an example, who, in your opinion, have advanced in this methodology that you've introduced? If you had to pick one.
That's a very difficult question. I mean, in England, we are run by a tight government. We're a small country. They have full control over everybody. It's probably why we're the most surveilled country in the world. It's not even more compared to China, probably, and Myanmar. But I would say America and Canada. From the research I've done in the last 6 months, I would say America and Canada. And the reason for this is because within colloquial areas, within small areas, they can petition the local government to make changes. Because they're such vast countries, it would be like Europe. You couldn't have one educational system all the way across Europe. It wouldn't work because disparate communities need disparate answers. They need different responses to solutions. And so they have a little more local control in North America and Canada. So 15 years ago, 16 years ago, they were pushing away from this very didactic, controlling teaching towards more portfolio-based, towards more academies and trusts coming together to offer greater facilities. The Australians did this in the late 90s in Queensland. They introduced what they called the Futures Curriculum, portfolio-based learnings. They discarded the O-levels at 16 and they gave them more internships individually, and they had portfolios of real work with real companies, real people, real teams to show what they were really capable of. This was 30 years ago. We are so far behind the times in this country. Aren't we, Carla?
Absolutely. I was just thinking when you said that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking when you said that about the one size fits all that people often say about the curriculum. And I was actually pointing a finger and saying, actually, we probably are the reason why we have that globally. People credit the British, for so many things, but the one size fits all factory form of education that Sir Ken Robinson was famous for, doing that speech saying how bad it was. It's definitely come from the British. And I think that the British will continue to hold on to it for dear life for a few years to come. And we'll probably be looking to America and other forward-thinking countries, braver countries, for real solutions. So absolutely, definitely.
And it's a difficult question as well, because it depends on parental expectations. You go to Pakistan or India when they're doing O-levels and A-levels, British O-levels and A-levels. You go to other countries like Singapore, where the Asian mothers are pushing the kids really very hard indeed. They want that expectation of discipline to be in the syllabus. You will go upstairs, you will study for 9 hours. There is no question about it. You will do these after school. Kids expect it because it's been brought into them, because there is parental control. How much parental control is in Dubai from Emiratis with their kids? Very little, right? It's a much more lackadaisical, relaxing. It's an oral culture. It's not a very academic culture pushed by grandmothers, is it? It's a completely different, everything depends on your social expectations in different countries.
I see. Thank you, Lawrence. Well, I'm being hopeful because we are having conversations just like that right now. We know that there are the people like you out there who are caring, who are on the mission of embracing coaching and educational system. So I think the future might look quite bright for all of us, and hopefully in all of our countries. Lawrence, I would like to thank you for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. It's been very insightful to come to know you. I'm personally going to dive in a little bit more into your researches to see on how the future might look like for my children. I would like to thank Jacob and Carla, my fantastic co-hosts and my backup people of RACE. We keep moving forward, and we are being hopeful that the initiatives like RACE will make a difference in the future. I would like to thank all of you, and I will see you guys next Wednesday. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
For joining.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Okay, man. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, Carl.